Hi folks, and welcome to Talking Sports Science. This presentation is going to be summarising the position stand from the International University Strength and Conditioning Association on using resistance training to maximise muscle hypertrophy in an athletic population. This position stand was created by Brad Schoenfeld and colleagues, and Brad, as we know, is often regarded as the hypertrophy specialist. Before we delve into the 6 key recommendations from the position stand, we need to define what hypertrophy is. Hypertrophy is a term to describe an increase in the cross-sectional area of a muscle fibre or whole muscle, and is due to increases in the size of pre-existing muscle fibres. Now we know what hypertrophy is, let's dive straight into the recommendations. Recommendation 1 is the load. Load refers to the magnitude of resistance employed during training. Individuals can achieve muscle hypertrophy using a wide spectrum of loading. However, there may be a practical benefit to prioritising the use of moderate loads, for example between 40 and 80% of your 1 repetition maximum, as this would be more time efficient than lighter loads, for example less than 40% of your 1 RM. And less taxing on joints and the neuromuscular system compared to very heavy loads, say above 80% of your 1 RM. Moving on to recommendation 2, which is volume. Volume refers to the total amount of work performed in a session. A dose of approximately 10 sets per muscle per week is regarded as the minimum volume needed to optimise hypertrophy gains. However, certain individuals may demonstrate a substantial hypertrophic response using lower volumes. Furthermore, evidence suggests potential hypertrophic benefits to using higher volumes, which may be particularly beneficial when trying to make those gains in muscle groups that are underdeveloped. Moving on to recommendation 3, which is frequency. Frequency refers to the number of training sessions performed in a given period of time. Significant hypertrophy can be achieved by hitting the gym as little as once a week using lower to moderate volume protocols. And there doesn't seem to be a hypertrophic benefit to greater weekly per muscle training frequencies provided set volume is equated. It may be of benefit to spread out volume over more frequent sessions when performing higher volume training programs. A general recommendation is to consider a cap per session volume at approximately 10 sets per muscle, and when applicable, increasing the weekly frequency to distribute additional volume. Moving on to the 4th recommendation, which is the rest interval. This refers to the period of time taken between sets of the same exercise or between different exercises in a given session. As a general rule, rest periods should last at least 2 minutes when performing multi-joint exercises. However, shorter rest periods between 60 to 90 seconds can be used for single joint and machine-based exercises. Okay, up to the 5th recommendation, which is exercise selection. This relates to what specific exercises you are going to include in your resistance training program. When prescribing exercises, you need to consider the following: the modality, the number of working joints, and the planes of movement and the angles of pull. When aiming to achieve hypertrophy, it is recommended to prescribe a variety of exercises that work muscles in different planes and angles of pull. This will help ensure that the whole body musculature is stimulated. Programming should include a combination of multi and single joint exercises to maximise whole muscle development. It should be noted that freeweight exercises with complex movement patterns should be performed regularly to reinforce motor skills. When it comes to ensuring variation within your program, less complex exercises can be rotated more often. Lastly, attention must be given to applied anatomical and biomechanical considerations, so that exercise selection is not just a collection of diverse exercises, but instead is a cohesive, integrated strategy designed to achieving gains that target the entire musculature. And on to the sixth and final recommendation, which is set endpoint. Set endpoint can be defined as the proximity to momentary failure during a repetition without deviation from the prescribed form of the exercise. Put simply, this means that despite trying to complete a repetition, an individual cannot complete the concentric portion of their current rep without cheating. Novice lifters don't necessarily need to train to failure. However, in order to ensure progression, as training age increases, intensity of effort needs to increase too. Therefore, highly trained lifters may benefit from taking some sets, for example the last set, to momentary muscular failure, but this should be used sparingly. Going to failure may be best suited to single joint movements and machine-based exercises to manage the stimulus-fatigue ratio and thus reduce potential negative consequences on the recovery process. It is noted that older athletes should employ failure training more sparingly to allow for adequate recovery. We have now covered the 6 key variables, which were load, volume, frequency, rest interval, exercise selection, and set endpoint that need to be considered when prescribing resistance training for athletes who aim to maximise muscle hypertrophy. Hope you found that useful, folks. This presentation was brought to you by Talking Sports Science. Thanks for listening. See you next time.